there were some other things in the Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you to our Teaching and Learning Committee meeting, April 18th, 2023 at 12:30. And I will turn it over to Dr. Cole.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Before I get started, kind of giving some background into what we're going to be talking about today, I'd like to introduce a few guests we have with us. We have Dr. David Slikas, who's over at VSU with the Education Department, Dean over there, and Dr. Debbie Payne, also with VSU, who's a former employee of Valdosta City Schools. And they're part of this partnership that we're looking at forging with Valdosta State University. Of course, we have Dr. Hudson, our interim superintendent, Mr. Owens Clemens, who's our HR director, Kylie Cashwell, who's our chief financial officer, and then Dr. Alex Alvarez, who's in the teaching and learning department, but has also worked extensively this year with Newbern Middle School and has worked with a program we have going between us and VSU called Branch Ed, which is about teacher development. I'm sure you've heard a lot about teacher shortages. You've also probably heard a lot in recent years about a lot of people entering the profession from an alternative route, not necessarily through an education department. But thankfully, we have a university here with a thriving education department, and we still do have some young people that are going the traditional route through an education preparatory program. And because of that, there is a group of students that was brought to our attention by Dr. Slikas and Dr. Payne, that they've got some really strong teacher candidates that would normally be doing the traditional student teaching in the fall. But these are students that have strong content, pedagogical knowledge, and that they feel are very well prepared to get headlong into teaching, not necessarily in the traditional way, but as a teacher of record potentially. And so what we want to talk to you about today is the concept of, for student teaching or the clinical practice portion of their education, paid internships. Now, this isn't something that's new. It's been something that's gone on in education for years, and it's also something that a lot of professions have. I provided you with something that they sent over from VSU where they had done a rundown of the different universities in the state of Georgia that are currently using this as a model to fill some of those vacancies with some high quality teacher candidates to where they complete their educational program as a teacher of record during a paid internship. And then of course, if things line up with them and with the school, they're potentially converted to a full-time teacher at the location where they're working. So we've had some preliminary talks with VSU in the fall when Dr. Kaysen was here. I was there, and Dr. Payne, Dr. Slikas. And we kind of talked about some of the generalities of it, but we also talked about some of those pressing needs at one particular school, Newbern Middle School, as far as personnel, because we had some vacancies that at that time we hadn't filled. Dr. Alvarez, who's the school improvement facilitator assigned to that school, worked extensively in the first half of this year over at Newbern Middle School with the transition of the interim principal and some shifts there. And so I asked him to be here today because he's very familiar with some of the needs of Newbern Middle School. We had a follow-up meeting, I guess, in February. Mr. Clemens was there where we were kind of talking about some of the logistics that would have to be involved. And of course, since you're dealing with paid internships and personnel, you're talking HR and finance. So we have Ms. Kylie Cashwell here as well in case there's any questions regarding that. So that's sort of the general premise, but we wanted to kind of make the T&L committee aware of that, where we are in that process. And then of course you'll be able to talk to the board as a whole. Right now we're looking at a pilot project of where we could do this at one middle school, perhaps then the second middle school. But this might be a model, if it works out well, that could be beneficial to Valdosta City Schools, but also to students going through the program. Maybe even encourage some people considering education as a route, because one barrier that has always existed for prospective student teachers is, under the traditional way, you have to just quit working and go full-time with student teaching. I remember that's what it was when I was getting certified. But for some people, that's, they can't live down the street with their parents like I did. Some people, they're having to pay bills, so that's not a viable route. So looking for ways we can encourage people who like our community, who want to work in our school system, maybe make it more attractive for them to stay here and get that experience and perhaps continue on with us. Do you have any questions for me or for any of those that are here about some of the specifics? Does that make some pretty good sense as far as what we're looking at doing?
It does.
Now, as far as how that would look in terms of contracts and financial, I'll defer to the HR department and finance. They could work out that, because we'd have to have an agreement with what that was going to look like for Valdosta State University. But we're trying to really get the ball rolling through this conversation, because we've got some students now that shortly will be heading home to for their summer, and they know they're scheduled to do some student teaching in the fall. So we're wanting to kind of be prepared to move forward and do some placements. First, looking at Newbern Middle School and trying to fill any needs they may have, but certainly depending on the overall number, and maybe Dr. Slikas could fill in this, depending on the number, if there was some other ones that needed placement, we may have some openings at the other middle school. So approximately how many students are we thinking there?
Our numbers are dwindling because they're being snapped up by other systems currently. So, I mean, I know we're already down 4 that have the students and want to keep them and are working toward making this happen. So
they're doing their practicum
yeah,
in
they
another
finished
system,
their practicum, right. They did their practicum in another system, and the practicum, it went so well, they've already offered and said, we'll hire you as a teacher of record. That's just how quickly candidates, any teacher candidates really from K-12, they are, if they show promise, if they show that working in collaboration with a strong mentor, they're going to be able to stand on their feet and roll. Those, especially in our rural areas where some of our candidates go for their practicum, they take them, and that's really, that's what we're up against right now. So I'm not saying that we wouldn't have about 4. I don't know. We could. I mean, I have yet to gather the group back together because I didn't have something to bring to them to say. I saw some of them last week that were, we've heard. So they're very anxious. They're eager. Of course, our semester ends in about 10 days, and so they're very eager. And I said, we're just hang on to just hang on. But they are if they are a candidate of promise, I'm telling you, They're being recruited.
So this is
So-
something, okay, good.
How are they determined to be a candidate of promise?
Sure, so that's through obviously the coursework that we have at the university, and then that's also through a scaffolded placement where they're placed, we do what we call professional development school models in Lowndes County. They came to us and they're there. And then one of the larger components is a 4-week apprenticeship that we have that happens the semester prior to their full student teaching or clinical practice. And that's really where they start to learn to stand alone. Up until that time, it's been a very scaffolded opportunity. We work with, they have a mentor teacher during that extended time. They have a university supervisor that is out there several times, 3 times during a 4-week period to monitor, to watch, to observe, to give that feedback. And so that's really where the starting point, is this one on? And so that's where we recognize fully that they truly are a candidate of promise, that they are really a kind of a cut above, that we're not seeing any red flags. We do formative checks throughout their entire program, so we try to determine if there are issues well before they get to that apprenticeship, and certainly before they get to that student teaching or clinical practice. We need time to either, remediate if this is their calling, or we need time to, kind of talk them out of the profession if this is not going to be what they need to do. And so we have 2 different formative checks throughout their entire program with us. We sit together as faculty to determine, hey, are there any red flags, especially with dispositions, because we know that content will be there. So we really look at those dispositions, teacher dispositions, to ensure that they're meeting the expectations of our programs. And then again, that if there are no red flags at that point, or we don't see any real issues, then that's when we know that they could have. Now, even as the teacher of record, they still have a mentor teacher.
Yeah.
That's a PSC requirement. That's not us. We're walking down those two different tunnels of a degree plus whatever PSC, the Professional Standards Commission, requires. And so they still are, we have to have a mentor teacher who meets the qualifications from the PSC. And of course, they'll still have a university supervisor who goes out, because they're still completing our program. They're not out there to stand alone. It's really trying to fit the needs of both the systems with the teacher retention and hiring issues, and then of course the needs of our candidates with the paid internship.
So, Dr. Payne, quick question. So, if the board decided to enter into this partnership
Yes, sir.
with a paid internship, you said that the intern would be the teacher of record. They would be assigned a mentor teacher
Within that school,
within that
yes.
school, and then they would have a BSU.
University supervisor, that is correct, who still comes out, who still does the observations, who meets with the candidates, meets with the mentor teacher, could meet with anyone on the campus. And so, yes.
So how many days a week would that mentor teacher work with the intern? Does that vary? Or?
It could vary. I think it will depend on the needs of that intern. It could be, I really believe it depends on the needs. My hope is that the intern is so well suited that they could, that those conversations happen during planning. Those conversations happen before school and after school. Those conversations happen, that mentor teacher could come in and do observations, even if it was once a week, or whatever that scheduled time is, or if that intern is struggling. They're novice teachers. They're still brand new teachers, and we don't expect them to have that type of background to never need any kind of support.
Okay.
One of the things that we had talked about when we were brainstorming last fall or in February with those mentor teachers was possibly hiring retired teachers to come in that role, dedicated mentors, so that you're not worried about pulling staff and putting extra stress on those folks. They're not trying to do that. And I think if eventually we get down to looking at the finances and so forth, I think we can make that work, because with the money that you'd be paying one of our student teachers versus a full salary, I think there'll be enough cost savings there to still hire these dedicated mentor teachers.
And one thing I did want to point out that's changed since even I was a student teacher is we didn't used to have academic coaches. Now we do at both middle schools that are content specific. So you've got additional support. We also, in the last few years, added induction support specialists for the district, Dr. Connie McCrae and Mr. Keith Hose. And so there's even more additional support. But what I found so encouraging about these students is we provide all that support to people coming the non-traditional route. The problem is when people come directly in without any College of Ed preparation, classroom management, the pedagogical instructional techniques, and often the content are not there, which complicates things. What we've got with these students, they have content-specific specialties. They've gone through the courses in classroom management, instructional strategies, assigned mentors, college supervisors, and induction support, plus our academic coaches. They've really got a whole team that's going to be working with them. But what's most encouraging also is that these students have had the chance to do that 4-week practicum experience where they're getting to co-teach and getting to get up sometimes solo with the students. So they've seen, is this for me? Can I do this? So that's very encouraging. And we always talked about the fact that we thought it may end up being 3 or 4, a small pilot for the fall. But assuming that it goes really well, then you have something to build on, not just at one particular location, but for the spring and that following fall across the district. And like I said, I hope this will be a great recruitment tool when people see I can, it's always encouraging if I major in something and I know I got a job when I'm graduating, but if I might have a job before I graduate and I can go ahead and get a leg up on the competition, I can see that as being a positive too. So,
and then also, in addition to, I think it's a great initiative here, but maybe starting out small, maybe 1 per grade level, and then if that works out, then it's something, as you indicated, Doctor, we can build on to this. But I like the idea of having a dedicated mentor for these teachers, these pre-service teachers, and also making our induction program a requirement for them to participate in that, although they've had courses, but then just that additional PL that would help them along the way. Because that mentor can really help them to become an accomplished teacher, and that's the goal.
And they would love that.
Yes.
They're so excited, and any type of professional learning, they would certainly gravitate toward and enjoy and appreciate building that new knowledge and building that knowledge as they enter that career. Whether they're it's a second career, we do have some non-traditional students, or whether they're just kind of that fresh, bright-eyed 22, 23-year-old coming out. They would
That's
appreciate
a great
that.
idea. Yeah.
So, I'm sorry. You were
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask, so the students are aware of the character of the school as far as the accomplishments and the challenges that we have at?
Somewhat. I haven't gotten down into the weeds that much. We have talked about that the potential to be at Newber Middle School would be one of the potential. I know that that Miss Sampson hired 2 that graduated in December.
that's right.
Right.
And
December.
both of them did well. There was one that I was almost concerned about because I wasn't sure that she was phenomenal. So they certainly wouldn't be standing alone. I believe that we have several candidates who would appreciate and really make a very positive impact there with the guidance of Miss Sampson and those APs and those instructional lead teachers. I do. I feel very positive about that.
And I'd like to add, I don't think that we would, in placing students in this position as student of record, it's a big deal for them, for the students that they're teaching, and all of that. So we would not do that without sort of a 2-tiered vetting process, right? So at first at the university, we would say, all right, if this is the class that's coming out to student teach right now, these are the ones that we think could handle it, and so we would do some sort of cut there, and then we would sort of present that list to the school, to the Valdosta City Schools, and allow you to do a second cut, right? To take another look at that and say, all right, well, these are the ones that actually match the positions we have, and even if they match a position we have, do we think after a discussion with them that they could handle it?
And to kind of piggyback on that, Dr. Alvarez, although he's in the teach and learn department, like I said, he was working extensively because of the transitions at Newbern this year. So he was there 3 days, sometimes 4 days a week. And the very candidates you're talking to that they converted over, it's not just switching them over to full time, but he was able to get the resources they need, the training. They even structured the team, shifted some people around to provide some of that support. So he could probably fill in some details about the surrounding support. And I neglected to say the teaching and learning department. We have content directors that are additional resource for all of our new teachers. Dr. Alvarez?
So a couple of things that weren't mentioned already is one thing we worked on at Newbern, and for those 2 teachers who came in mid-year, is an extensive onboarding checklist and review, working with the academic coaches and administrators there. We put that together in November, December, because we've had teachers starting at different points in the year, some the week of school, a few weeks after school, mid-year. And so we really looked at components that have to do with pedagogy for sure, but then also just the organizational management components of the school, who to know or who to meet, how PBIS works, all the different initiatives. There's I think we had 25 different areas that we were looking at. It's pretty extensive and can be overwhelming without that planning process and that onboarding process up front. So that's something that I think even with the branch ed component we could look at. The branch ed grant in partnership, we could look at making sure there's clarity with teachers coming on and having that knowledge up front. In addition to the mentors that we have in place and academic coaches, there's also that structured time for collaborative planning where they can work with teachers in the same grade level, same subject area. So that's scheduled in addition to that planning that you guys pushed this year to be available for individual planning time, but that also opens up protected time to work with mentors and academic coaches too. So a lot of that thinking's been going on, and then the work that we've done already in the past few months and discussions with the branch ed partnership, I think is going to go a long ways.
I do too. And we've committed, just a couple of my faculty and myself, I want to work hands-on with this initiative. I want to ensure that what we are building, hopefully what we are putting together, will be very successful in the long run, not just for the short term. Just like Dave was saying, I was here, 13, 14 years, and this is still my heart. And when Dr. Slykeis, when we really started looking at this, and he said, I'd like to partner with the city school, I said, absolutely, 100%. So it's really a vested interest also in our department, whether it's elementary, middle grades, or secondary. And we certainly agree that a pilot really will help us to gather data necessary to determine and to look at our own programs. What are we doing? That's one of the reasons that we're with the branch ed, as it truly looks at how are we preparing our candidates to handle diverse settings and work with children, all types of children. We believe we know what we're doing, and we believe we do it well, but there's always that room for those external eyes to force us to review and to look at what we do, to ensure that the products that we're putting out for our children in our communities are the best that they can be. And so we open that, we welcome that review. So again, it's just, I feel dedicated to the process and to the initiative. And even with supervisors, I know that if this can get off the ground, that there's going to be another layer. I know there's a couple of faculty members along with myself that we want to be right there in that trench to ensure so that we can determine this is going great, this is not going great. How can we change this to make it better?
And the branch ed initiative between us and VSU, the best way of saying that is, rather than VSU and Valdosta City Schools waiting around hoping that more and better teachers come to us, we're going to build better teachers through this collaborative, and we want to make sure we provide them the opportunities to work in our school systems. It's a great school system, great kids, and it's a great profession, but we realize, like any profession, if you're not constantly recruiting to replenish your staff, people will go in a different direction. Dr. Hudson?
Yes, one quick question.
Of course.
You all provided us with some
Mhm.
data here, and we appreciate that. We see the different institutions across the state that has embarked in this program, this type of program. Do you all have any background information to tell us how these programs are working with Albany State, since they're kind of close to us? Is it successful there?
I don't
You
have,
don't- okay,
I
I'm just
don't have
curious.
anything
Okay.
past that.
The only one that I have been in collaboration with that I've seen, actually, and talked with, I was in a webinar with PSC because PSC is looking at this quite heavily. They also understand, as well as the legislators and the governor, about this teacher shortage. And so how are we going to address this statewide? Bibb County has been engaged in this process. I'm not sure what institution that they are working with, but Bibb County has been doing this quite a while with great success. I don't know how they started, I don't know the background, but they were one of the presenters at this webinar that I was in. It's probably been a year ago, but they have been doing this quite a while in Bibb County. And so it has been, and Wesleyan, the Wesleyan.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, they've got a very strong
They do
program
have a strong program.
there, as well as Georgia Southwestern.
That's right.
They have a
Okay.
very
The
strong,
Americas.
program there. And I was just speaking with the HR director in Seminole County, and they're wanting to start this initiative this upcoming year. And they're gonna start out, small and gather the data and then see how it goes from there. So I think it's a really, really great initiative, to assist us in filling some vacancies that we might have.
We'd rather the kids from VSU be able to walk right across the street and find their new home rather than have to go all the way to Southwest Georgia.
Now, I got to talk with Bibb County's HR director a few months ago about it as well, and then Dr. Sims, our new superintendent. But they're really anticipating the need to be an increasing thing annually, and so that they're really heavily weighing what type of incentives, beyond what's on the paper there now to make this work.
I'm telling you, people are jumping on, and
Yeah.
they're jumping on very, very quickly.
Yeah, we just had an education career fair on campus last week, and there were 60-some school districts there from as far away as Houston, Texas. I talked to the lady from Houston, Texas, and she had a folder full of contracts that she was wanting people to sign as she was there. For anyone that would walk by, she would hand them a contract to sign. And we literally almost have no current student teachers to even send to the career fair. Because if your student teaching is going well, you're being hired by that district. And so, I mean, this is what, I want, and I have made this clear since I started here, I want to start with Valdosta City and do everything we can. We are part of the city as Valdosta University and Valdosta City. We should be working hand in hand. And I want to help you guys as much as I can with teacher shortages and what we can do. But if you wait until after they graduate, it's too late. They're gone. I mean, you've got to get them, and you've got to incentivize them to get them in the schools and to be doing their student teaching and get them to want to stay that way.
And we've hired about 4 or 5 so far.
The phone calls
Yeah.
from about mid-May until August, every week, somebody's calling. Dr. Payne, you're too late. Sorry, wait, get in line.
I do have a question. So the interns would be here for semester to semester, or would it be the entire school term?
So they would finish that, what was normally they call it clinical practice, we call it student teaching. They would be doing this group in the fall. Then at the end of that, assuming they do well, graduate, then the discussion would be, do they want to, and do we want them to continue on in that school in that position? There's always the possibility.
After their student teaching.
After the student
At
teaching,
that
yeah.
time, we could sit and offer them a contract to continue employment with our
Right.
district.
And would that be as the paid intern before?
So at that point, they would have graduated, earned their full induction certification, and could move into.
Yeah. The first semester, yes, as a paid intern.
Right.
Okay.
Once they officially graduate, then it would switch. So they basically get a half year toward retirement. Yeah, they'd start halfway through. That used to happen back
They get a full year.
Oh, because they're a paid intern. Okay, so that's even better because the way it used to work, is if you started mid-year because of your student teaching, you only got a half a year credit toward retirement. This way, they complete with a full year.
Because they're the teacher of record.
That's right.
Because they're the teacher of record as that paid internship, it qualifies them for that full year.
And even if they have intentions in the long run of moving back wherever they're from, you got a quality teacher for that full year. Whereas opposed to that, we may be looking at long-term subs or midway through the year switching. Neither of those are desirable. So this is good. But if we got them in the building for a year and they like us and we like them, they might stay for 30 years. So
So is there any way that we can, this is good information, can we get it documented? I'm hands-on, yes, something written down
Okay.
so that I can go through and look over it again, and the
Yes,
other
ma'am.
board members?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can do some.
Okay,
Now, keep in mind, again, now, this paid internship, this is not an additional cost to the district.
okay,
Because what we're going to do is, it's already a vacancy.
Right.
So that salary amount has already been accounted for, it's there. So all we're gonna do is take that salary amount that, if we had the regular teacher, we would take that salary amount, and if we wanna do the paid internship at $25,000 for that first semester, then that's the money that we would use for that vacant position to pay for that internship.
It's actually
Okay.
saving.
It's
us.
actually
Yeah,
saving
saving
us
us
money.
money.
Yes.
yeah.
And so again, at the end of that semester, if this is a teacher that we want to retain, then we'll sit down with HR and we'll offer that person a contract to continue on with us for the second semester and maybe many more years to come. So again, this is a great opportunity for our district, and we appreciate Dr. Spikehouse and Dr. Payne for considering Valdosta City Schools for this project, because it could be a win-win for
Exactly.
everyone.
Absent this, though, you may be looking at realistically long-term subs in those classes for the entire year.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. That's what sparked this whole thing. It would be preferable to have a high-quality teacher that's almost ready to go and then continue on. Otherwise, you're spending money on someone who you know is a temporary fix for a bigger issue. So that's but as far as how that contract would
Okay.
look as a paid intern and how it would switch, HR would be able to flesh that out. But like I said, it looks like a great pilot potential, but we don't act soon. We may find out we can't even get one.
And so Madam Chair, Ms. Hurd, what we would like for the board to consider is that we enter into this agreement with Valdosta State University for this coming fall to start this paid internship program. So this is something that we would like for you all to present to the board on Tuesday night, so that way we can get the full board's blessing and maybe move with this to help our district and Valdosta State at the same time.
Thank you.
That was the main crux of our meeting today. Are there any more questions for me or any of the other parties involved?
no, just, to have it, written out for us.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. We'll have all of that ready for you.
And will it also have like the terms of the agreement in there?
Yes, ma'am. We'll work on that.
Because I know there will be a lot of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
You can give them a copy of that. That may be for them to read over. This is a separate venture we have with VSU that's made up of multiple people at the district and school level, where we're partnering with them to make sure that their college preparatory program meets the needs of public education. So they want to make sure that the instructional strategies, the content, and the expectations we have for teachers, they're preparing them fully. So it's a great program. It's grant funded, so it's not costing VSU or us or anything. And there's even stipends for off-contract work. But we've got everything from Columbus Carter, our star teacher for the system, to our curriculum directors, to several principals. So it's extensive on our end as well on VSU's end. So Dr. Alvarez, if you want to give them that so they can look over that, we might have a follow-up session at one of our TNL meetings where we
Okay.
can kind of give you more detail on that. But it really will help in preparation for future students doing this.
So what I'm giving you is just the overview and what the district commitments are, and then the key competencies for that as well. And the back pages are year one goals, and then the four focus groups that Dr. Cole mentioned. We have a great cohort of folks working together. But it goes hand in hand with the partnership we just talked about with the internships, and definitely supports that. An overall goal of this organization is to ensure that all graduates are confident in their abilities to teach all students. So that equity piece is tied in there, culture relevant teaching is tied in to this area of focus, and really making sure our teachers, the question you asked, are aware of what the expectations and the different factors within the school actually are. So again, that I think the timing's great with that grant and the internship initiative. On the back of the page is our participation and investment, and overall expectations. I won't read all that to you, but then the different focus groups that our district folks are involved in is on that fact sheet. And we're looking at teacher candidate competencies, mentor teacher onboarding, which I mentioned earlier about the onboarding importance, developing tools and instruments to monitor what we expect, and then plan and evaluate professional development. So it really follows the continuous improvement process that we use within our strategic plan and school improvement process as well. So lots of great alignment.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty convinced that we're sending you good student teachers right now. After 2 years of this branch head, and we've been going through that, I think they'll be even better.
Dr. Alvarez, right? I'm sorry. Can you also ensure that the other board members get a copy of this?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
So, Madam Chair, what we'll do is we will have you that outline. We'll have it
Okay.
to you by Thursday, so that way you can review it. If you have any questions, you can get with us well in advance, so that way we can answer any questions that you may have once you get that outline.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we need to be the board meeting, or you get, no?
I think it would be good, just in
idea.
case there are questions.
That's the
When is this
25th.
board?
I know there'll be questions.
It's gonna be Tuesday night, so what's Tuesday, this coming Tuesday?
I believe it said SL Mason.
It's gonna be at SL Mason in the gym at 7 p.m.
We'll just need to make sure the description, we get a description and I guess anything as far as how the paid internship will work.
We'll have all that
Yeah.
outlined for Madam
Yeah.
Chair.
Okay.
All right, well, that's the main purpose of the meeting, so if there's no other questions, I can turn it back over to you.
Ms. Hurd, did you have anything?
No, I'm fine. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, thank you all for coming out this afternoon. The meeting is adjourned.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.